I grew up where verbal and emotional abuse is very prevalent throughout the members of the family. The amount of verbal and emotional abuse perpetuated throughout my familial line is pretty insane. Now, being that I grew up around this meant that I surrounded myself with people and I analyzed their familial dynamics. I've been a student of people my whole life because I've always questioned why people chose to show up the way they choose to show up, and why I grew up and what I grew up with, why other people grew up and what I grew up with, all the stuff. I just have a very analytical mind and I like to have the answers and come to determinations and do studies, I guess you could say, of people. So I'm a student of people, and I've observed people and how they show up and how other families show up and how they treat each other and speak to each other and all of this stuff. It's pretty remarkable how many family members of mine, they got away with all the verbal and emotional abuse. How many of them still perpetuate verbal and emotional abuse to other family members? Observing other families, I then saw how they treated each other and how they would abuse each other and how their generational trauma cycles would continue and everything like that. And I've made all these observations of various other people and their families and their dynamics and everything. And I've utilized this to see how I want to show up and how I choose to show up and how I deserve to be treated, how people truly deserve to be treated, and how much abuse actually perpetuates through familial lines, through the generations. And it takes people standing up and speaking out against it. It takes people actually not tolerating it anymore. It takes people separating themselves from the family who is choosing to abuse them. It's amazing how much I can see patterns of abuse, patterns of trauma, patterns of neglect, everything through people's familial lines, through their interactions. I can see it through how people interact with one another, how they have possibly been abused through the familial line, everything like that. I stop the familial abuse with myself. I don't continue it on. I reject being in anyone's company who also is abusive. Now, if people are working on healing themselves, great. More than happy to converse with you. But if you come at me and you approach me and you come from an unhealed state of mind, then I am not going to tolerate you in my presence. I do not tolerate mistreatment. I do not tolerate abuse, and I do not tolerate bullying. I have a lifetime of experience in seeing how it is, and I know to stand up for myself against anyone who chooses to treat me as less than. We do not have to tolerate the mistreatment of others just because they're so-called family.